Okay, maybe we can start with a question from Geetanjali. So the question is, during the lecture, while describing angles theta and phi, a comment is made that the basis is the acceleration and the velocity vector and the line of sight. I cannot see that because by definition, theta is the angle between line of sight and the velocity vector. I think there's a general confusion about how we define which part was that.
So this is corresponding to which definition? While describing the angles theta and phi.
So this was during, I think, relativistic transformations. You chose a basis that is the acceleration vector.
Acceleration, velocity, and line of sight. That is correct.
Yes. So the line of sight is arbitrary, right? Only the acceleration
line of sight
vector,
is arbitrary.
Yeah, acceleration vector and the velocity vector forms the basis.
Yeah. So the angle is, I mean, you are describing the line of sight by these two angles with respect to the velocity vector.
Actually, there was a comment during the lecture when I was listening to it that I mean that when you were describing that there has to be a certain basis, and there was a comment, I think not by you, by one of the participants, and probably there was agreement on that the third direction is the line of sight. One is acceleration, one is velocity. The third is, it cannot be, because as you just said, line of sight is arbitrary, and the way you define angle theta is the angle between the line of sight and the velocity. I mean, the theta and phi's are defined with respect to acceleration and velocity for a given line of sight.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find it.
So I mean, so what would be, okay, I mean, what would be the third direction in that case? So one is acceleration, one is velocity. What would be the third axis then defining?
Just a minute. Let me. Yeah. So I think there is this figure. Let me try to share. I don't know whether this is what you are talking about.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So here we have acceleration perpendicular to velocity. So velocity and acceleration, they form a plane. Normal to the plane is the other direction. For it, you don't need any other vector. You have velocity and acceleration in a plane. Normal to the plane is the third direction. And with respect to velocity, then we define theta. And with respect to the projection of the line of sight, this red line is the line of sight, right? So projection of this on the plane containing acceleration and the normal to the v acceleration plane, the angle that makes with respect to acceleration is phi prime. Is that clear?
Yeah, right.
Here is the line of sight, which is in red.
Right, right.
It in a plane containing acceleration velocity, and in another plane, which is acceleration and normal to the plane containing velocity and acceleration. And these two vectors, these two projections, now I take an angle with respect to A, with respect to V, that gives me theta. And with respect to A prime, that gives me phi. This figure, were you able to see, or maybe it just went by too fast in the lecture? I'm not sure.
No, it was there. It was there throughout the discussion. The figure was there.
Okay. So if you interpret this figure properly, you should be able to understand what the angles are. Is it clear now?
Yes, it is. I got confused with the comment that was made that the third direction is by one of the probably listeners during the talk, that the third direction is the line of sight, because I could interpret that red line as the line of sight.
Okay, so there was some audience reaction.
Yeah, yes.
Which might have been misleading. That is right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Vijay, you want to ask a question?
Yes, sir. Good evening to you.
Yeah.
When you introduced the magnetosphere being at an oblique angle to when you started with it, you said that because of this reason there is a time-dependent factor attached to the electric field. Like why does oblique lead to a time-dependent factor?
Because once you have something that is at an angle with respect to spin axis, then there is no symmetry around the spin axis. So as the spin goes through a cycle, the magnetic geometry goes through a variation with respect to any observer, right?
Okay.
That is, that's what basically makes the pulsar pulse, right?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So are we considering precession and other perturbations in this?
No, we have not considered
yet.
any of that. That may happen, but that's not considered in any of these treatments.
But do pulsars perturb?
Pulsars do what?
Do they perturb, or is the angle perfect in its rotation?
Do they precess?
Yeah, do they precess?
Oh, okay. Yeah, they may precess. There are mild evidence of precession in some cases.
Okay. And another question is regarding the general relativistic effects. So can we say that the general relativistic effects are reasonably due to the spin of the pulsars rather than the mass?
No. Mass is the main reason why there is general relativistic effect.
Okay.
And once there is a strong mass, the gravity of that mass causes the space-time to be dragged with spin. So both are required. But if you had a much lower mass, even if you spun it at that rate, it would not have dragged this space-time.
So this is the frame dragging effect you were talking
Yeah, this is the frame dragging effect. That is correct.
Okay. The thing is, when you are having this radiation, so is it possible that this gravitational effect will cause a lensing on the radiation coming from the pulsar?
The trajectory of radiation produced in the pulsar magnetosphere or anywhere near the pulsar will be affected by gravity.
Okay.
And the photon path will not be straight from the point of emission. It will go through whatever is the geodesic in that gravitational field. So if it is far away from the pulsar,
okay,
then the bending is not too much.
Okay.
If the radiation originates very close to the pulsar, then there is some degree of bending.
Oh, far away from the pulsar means, are you referring to the radiation from the wind?
No, even light, a few hundred kilometers is very far.
Okay.
So if it's within a few tens of kilometers, then you will see some effect. Even that is small.
Okay.
Radiation particularly originating very near the surface, within a kilometer or so, that's where the effect is maximum.
Okay.
But most of the radiation that we actually observe from the pulsars that we are talking about, the magnetospheric emission, that is significantly far away compared to that.
Okay. Now this is with respect to the light cylinder.
Yeah, light cylinder is usually quite far away.
Okay. Okay. Light cylinder is far away. Okay. And is the effect of gravitational lensing of some other object, like when we are observing pulsar radiation, is it a is it a matter of considerable study, the effect of gravitational lensing on pulsar radiation of any other, say, a distant black hole which comes in the way of the pulsar?
Yeah, that is definitely possible.
Okay. So we are able to observe that. So
we have not observed, I don't think we have observed gravitational lensing per se, but the effect we have observed is when we see a pulsar in a binary system, let us say.
Oh,
and the line of sight, and let's say it's a double neutron star. So the second star also has a strong gravity at the surface. And when the radiation passes through very close, or line of sight passes through very close to the other neutron star, you do see bending of light.
okay.
So you can measure that in pulse arrival times. So pulse arrival times go through delays and so on.
Okay.
And so we don't use the term gravitational lensing in this case, but there are other terms to describe the same effect, because you're measuring timing delays, not images and so on. So this effect is the same as what is called Shapiro delay.
Shapiro delay.
Yeah,
SHAPIRO.
that is correct.
Yes. Okay.
And that is observed in binary pulsars.
Okay. Okay. And when we were speaking about, when we go into the theory of scattering, we are seeing various Compton scattering, various Thomas scattering and all. So I just wanted to know how we can connect with Born approximation, which we study in quantum theory.
Why do you need to do Born approximation here?
Like it is the, I don't know, in a layman's point of view, I'm thinking it is the basic baseline for all scattering process. Is that wrong?
No, it is used to describe scattering, basically Coulomb scattering of either electrons or charged particles from nuclei, right? Where there is a certain potential well that is defined,
Oh,
right? So you need to have a potential
okay.
where the scattering is occurring.
Hmm.
Here you have radiation scattering,
Oh, okay,
right?
okay. Yes, yes, yes.
So because when you have a potential, then to describe the motion in that potential, either you do it exactly, but sometimes that is difficult given the shape and nature of the potential. So you make certain approximations, and Born approximation is one of those. You don't need to do any of that here for radiation scattering.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Abhishek, you can ask a question.
Sir, I have two questions. First is related with general relativistic correction. You mentioned that space-time will be curved due to mass is there, but mass is also spinning in only one direction. So is it possible to space-time to be curved means moving stretch along with the spin of the star?
It is dragged along with the star, right?
Okay.
It is dragged in the direction in which the star is spinning. Space-time is curved because of the mass, and it is dragged because of the spin.
Okay, sir. And sir, my second question is, in the GR correction model, we see that there is a current sheet and also polar activity, and both are populated with charges.
Yes.
So is it possible that the current sheet, which is kind of related with the high energy emission, can produce radio emission due to Compton scattering?
So why should Compton scattering produce radio emission?
The high energy radiations are produced initially, and
Yes.
those photons, energetic photons, get scattered by low energetic charge particles and then decrease in
So then you have to have a lot of low energy charged particles in those regions.
Okay, sir.
But if you do have any charged particle in those current sheets, they're almost immediately accelerated to very high energy. So Compton scattering tends to give you even higher energy photons rather than lower energy photons.
Okay, sir. So there is kind of no low energy, kinetic energy particles. I mean, all of them are accelerating, right?
Because there is voltage there. Any charged particle, if you drop there, it will immediately get accelerated to very high energy.
Okay, sir.
That you cannot stop.
Okay, sir. Understood.
But that said, some emission process can have its tail in radio. It's not entirely ruled out.
Okay, sir.
Okay, any other questions? There's one in the chat. Is there study of spatial distribution of pulsar radiation? Does it show signature of the polar gap? Are they asking for evidence of polar
Yeah,
gap?
so I presume you are talking about beaming pattern. So spatial distribution of pulsar radiation, we don't see one pulsar and we are not able to map the entire spatial distribution of the emission emitted by a pulsar. All we know is what cuts our line of sight. And I think we will come to that in little later in the course. We have not got there yet. The emission pattern from various regions of the pulsar magnetosphere can be projected into the sky, and overall three-dimensional beam pattern can be generated. And then you take a line of sight and cut it. And through that cut, you try to reproduce the pulse profile at various frequencies, from radio all the way to gamma rays. And that is how you can infer whether some emission is coming from polar caps, some emission is coming from the current sheet, and what the shapes of those things are. The results are not unambiguous, but it gives us some hints. So some of that will come later in the lectures.
Okay, sir.
The second question is, what drives the pulsar magnetic field? You mean, what is the origin of the pulsar magnetic field?
Yes, sir.
So you don't need an active dynamo. The conductivity of a neutron star is extremely, extremely high. So if you generate a magnetic field and leave it there, unless you do something to it, it will stay for much longer than the age of the universe without very much happening. So the question that people tend to ask is, why do some of the pulsar magnetic fields tend to get lower when they age? That is more of a mystery than what retains the field. But the initial origin of the field, it could be inherited from the stage just before pulsar formation. Either it could be just a flux frozen field from the progenitor, which may or may not be strong enough, or in the process of the core contracting and then finally going supernova, in that period, there is a high degree of turbulence in the stellar core. And during that turbulence, one can very easily generate extremely strong magnetic fields. So some of that, if it remains in the final neutron star, then we'll already have a strong magnetic field. There are small details about alignment of these magnetic fields. How do you get poloidal components which with some degree of alignment and so on? But those are some uncertainties which will always be there in a dynamo mechanism. But if you have a pre-existing field and the dynamo operates in the presence of a pre-existing field, then the pre-existing field can determine the direction in which the final dynamo field will align.
Okay,
But
sir.
after the pulsar is formed, after a neutron star is formed, it's unlikely that there is any dynamo going on. Large-scale fluid motions are very difficult inside the pulsar.
Or what we'll do is, as I mentioned in the email today, we'll go through one by one, and we would like to just for you to just casually say, for instance, you could answer two questions that I posed in the email. One is, say, which particular part so far from all the lectures that you have listened to, which particular topic was particularly hard for you? And the other thing could be, you could say, which new concept did you learn about pulsars that you didn't already know before? So what we'll do is we'll go through the list alphabetically as it appears here in Zoom. And you guys can unmute yourself, and it'll just take about 30 seconds or a minute. And you can just say that, no pressure. Okay, shall we start? And in between, if you have any questions while your turn is up, you can ask that question as well. No problem. Abhay?
Yes, sir. So this whole topic of pulsar itself is new to me, and it's a good thing to learn about the magnetosphere and how the currents are shifting in that, and the co-rotating nature of the magnetosphere. Uh, what I found difficult was the pulsar equation and its numerical simulations, and the split monopole theory. All those topics I have to start off learn again.
Yes, so those are not terribly intuitive. So one has to work through the algebra to some extent to get a real feel for it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and we don't expect everybody to understand everything during the course itself. You'll
Yeah.
have to go back and work on it. It'll take some time.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you. Abhishek?
Uh, yes, so initially the magnetospheric solution was very tough to grasp that what is actually the concept. I mean, the magnetic field was easy to understand. Okay, that we have considered dipole magnet, but later on the force-free conditions and then on the development of electric field was tough. But after some time, I get the actual concept. But algebra is, I still think the algebra is kind of tricky to get, and the general relativistic correction was difficult. I mean, how actually it's the frame dragging is to visualize this, to visualize it is still tough for me, but I'm working on it. How those stuff are calculated, and to get new things is actually from this course. Whatever I have read in textbook, the basic radio astronomy textbook, they all talk about very basic things about pulsar. That okay, the pulsar they actually do not tell us about the actual magnetospheric, that how it is produced. They only say that okay, consider a lighthouse, and okay, from poles we get radio emission, but how actually radio emissions are generated, and what are the actual conditions that from with inclination, how the emission profiles and other things will get changed, they do not talk about it. So I learned many things from fundamental of pulsar to these things. So I learned many things from this course.
Thank you. I think you have put your finger on a problem that many of these concepts also they have been although they have been around now for almost 50 years, there has hardly been a textbook which has compiled all this, and that's one of the reasons why people find it difficult to gather all this information together, and that was one of the motivations also for putting together this course. So at least it will compile some of the material. But much of this is still in research literature. It's not been totally put together in a comprehensive form in a book. Although there are some nice review articles which you can look at.
Yeah, and I would like to add that, as you were saying, Abhishek, the algebra just takes a lot of time, and many times it's not straightforward and as presented in the papers. So all of you, you need not get disheartened about the amount of time it takes to solve those things. Thanks. Amar? Amar Pal Singh, would you like to add something? Amar Pal Singh?
Not unmuted.
Yeah. Are you able to unmute yourself? Okay, if you
Or
are
maybe he is
able
not
to,
there. Yeah.
yeah, unmute yourself at a later point, you can always jump in. Aniket Prasad?
Hello, good evening, sir. So actually, I came to this course after, as Abhishek said, uh, reading about basic emission mechanisms of pulsars. So what I actually got to learn from this at first place was this build up, that how this emission occurs and what is this origin. Like it helped me grasp it more intuitively. So that was first for me. Like this was the first moment when I actually got to understand how this mechanism, I mean, how this emission is originating and all. So this was a very new thing for me. And also, again, the toughest, I don't think there was anything like that, but being an undergraduate, I found some of the, I mean, use of advanced electrodynamics concepts. Those were a bit tougher for me, but it's actually, they are taking a extra hour every lecture for me, but that's all. There's not something which is very tough, but they are rigorous. So yeah, that part was like a bit difficult for me to derive those equations which are just stated in these research papers. That was something I am actually working on right now also to grasp those concepts, and also some general relativistic concepts which I haven't yet, I mean, faced previously. So I need to brush up those concepts also. That would be, I mean, be a bit tougher to for me, but that's all. And most importantly, as sir said, there are not many literature which compile all these. So getting all those, I mean, one after other, the different solutions and different models, these things were not readily available to read. And of course, I also like to mention the amount of resources which has been like put over, like the different research papers and the articles. These were not very easy to like find on our own. So we have a repository which we can look up to for understanding the astrophysics part of pulsars. So that is very informative and helpful for me also. Uh, that's all from my side. Like that's it. That was very helpful. This resources, and also my difficult part was this algebra part, but I am working on it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, all of you who are in the undergraduate level, I would commend you for at least staying on through this course, because it's actually not pitched at that level at all. We had designed it for a post MSc level, for graduate students and above. So if you are actually making the effort to go through it and are able to understand it and so on, kudos to you, I would say.
Sir, I was keenly interested in electrodynamics. So I thought if I have knowledge of electrodynamics and I can intuitively understand electromagnetism, so I can understand pulsars. So that was my expectation from this course. And so far it has been very helpful and enriching.
Yeah, very good to know.
Thanks, Aniket. Anubhav? Anubhav, can you unmute yourself? Amarpal Singh, you would like to add? I can see that you are unmuted.
Good evening, sir. This is Amarpal Singh, educator astronomy from BBS Planetarium, Gorakhpur, Uttar Pradesh, India. And by doing this course, I have learned a lot of things as well. So I also want to know more about the astronomy and related to science, about all these things, as an being an educator at the planetarium. So always a different source of knowledge has been gathered about the astronomy related to science from his childhood up to now, and learning is a lifelong process, as you know very well, all these things. So this course is enhancing my education level and about the stars and planets and beyond the propellement of the universe. And at the same time, we learned a lot about the pulsars also, sir. So I would like to give a big thanks to you for the sake of doing this course organizing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amarpal. Anubhav, are you able to unmute? Okay, if not, we'll move to Chetna Jain.
Yes. Hi, Dipankar sir. Hello, Prakash.
Hi.
Hi, how are you, sir? I'm good, sir. So I'll start with the history. meaning I never had a formal course in astrophysics, not even coursework during my PhD. So it was always a dream to study from the Dipankar sir. So I joined this course, and meaning I did it during 2005, 2010, and over the years I've lost all my notes. So it is kind of a revision for me. But then there was a twist here that it is taking me more than 5 to 6 hours per week. And my second problem is that I'm not able to increase my score to more than 80%. Meaning score is not everything, but I feel somewhere I'm losing on some nitty gritties of pulsar emission. I don't know how to improve that part.
80% is not bad at all, Chetna. But,
Meaning, I don't know, meaning
so you are able to
But I'm
give
lacking.
5 to 6 hours a week now? I mean, it's not, must not be.
I'm able to manage 5 to 6 hours, but it meaning I'm lagging behind. I'm not in sync with your pace, meaning the pace of the course. Like the next quiz is around, but I have not attended any of the 3 lectures. So meaning I'm still making my notes from the first 2 assignments.
Right.
I lost all my notes down the line. So it is taking a lot of time.
Yeah, but you know, this course, one of the things about the digital course is that you can just catch up at your pace. That's also possible.
But still, meaning I'm not scoring good. Meaning score is not everything. I agree, but that means I am not understanding everything. Meaning I have to ask the other pulsar neutron star people, what is your status? So everybody is like in the same boat. हमें भी नहीं इतना नहीं आया. दीपांकर sir तो बहुत ही hi-fi पढ़ा रहे हैं. Meaning all the neutron star group.
Yeah.
I don't know. Meaning when we listen to your lectures, they are straightforward and it appears that we are understanding everything. But the moment we see the assignment and the quiz, it's taking hell lot of time. Meaning, so we are lagging. We are not expert yet. We need 2-3 more courses like this.
Well, no,
What to do?
I think I would say limited number of lectures and more amount of self-study is finally what is going to
Yeah, that is true.
resolve this problem, because just listening to lectures up to a point is fine. But
Yeah, we
I
have
think to learn a rather rigorous and complicated subject like this, there is no substitute for working things out
We
yourself.
have to dig up all our books and see here and there. Meaning, Ayuka is very difficult, I must say. Meaning, we are not being able to be in sync with, or meaning it'll take time, but otherwise it's a fantastic revision. Meaning we are improving our.
Yeah, let's hope so.
So yeah, that's it.
Okay, all the best.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I can add a couple of things, and one about grade, but the other thing is about the pace of the course. Don't try to measure up to the pace of the course. We had to do with the constraints we are working with as well. It's not actually designed so that we expect that everyone or people who we are targeting, they should be able to follow this pace. We are trying it out the first time now, and we'll try to see how well it goes, like how people are able to keep up with it. And as far as the grades, I mean, again, the same thing happens. Like, we haven't designed it so that the questions are specifically something you should definitely have gotten within a week or something. It's hard to design questions like that.
Meaning not about this thing, meaning I attended the refresher course also. So there also I was hanging between 70 to 80%. So I'm missing out something, and meaning there is scope
70 to 80 is quite good for all these courses.
Meaning there are scope for cheating from here and there, everything. But I do not know how you frame the question and what are the 4 choices. They look similar to us. Meaning in the recent quiz, the GJ model, all the options looked perfectly fine to us. Meaning I read the paper so many times, I went through the presentation, and when you send us the solution, that looks so trivial. So there is much to be learned here. So the Dipankar sir is the Dipankar sir that way.
Well, if I'm not getting through, then I'm not succeeding, am I?
No, meaning I am not able to go past 80%. It will be achievement if I score 81%. Meaning, okay, back at
Okay,
the
all the best.
score is not everything.
Generally, I would tell people that even if you get 50, 60, I think it's pretty good. You
That
don't
is
have
a
to aim for
consolation
81. I
prize
mean,
for
it's
you.
always good, the highest, but yes.
So that looks like
It's always good to aim
We'll
high.
decide
So
on.
what,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So Shan, you wanted to add something?
Say something. She's the best person. She's sir's student, so she'll say the best thing.
No, I would rather have been sort of inspired by Chetana's comments. I have never really learned the emission process properly, always thinking this is really very difficult. So I have always sort of bypassed it, just learning the basics and not getting deeper. So this is the first time I'm sitting down and walking through everything. I'm going very slow because there are various other things one needs to do, but this has been fantastic. Thank you, Dipankar.
This is excellent course. Meaning something challenging has come after a long time.
Yeah, this is challenging, that I will agree. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, it will probably get even more complicated towards the end when we
But
try
anyway,
to understand radio emission.
I have your email ID. I'll bug you again if I get stuck.
That's right, yeah.
Or otherwise, I'll invite myself to Ayuka.
Yeah. So once we
settle.
are out of these travel restrictions, then you're most welcome.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I'll mute myself now.
Sure.
Geetanjali?
Yeah. So, I mean, after all those expert words, I must say I'm a total newcomer. I had no background with astronomy. I just started with all these courses only. So I am actually struggling pretty bad, but I'm really enjoying because electrodynamics is something that keeps me tied to it. I'm finding simulating the magnetosphere part the most difficult, but I'm enjoying these the lectures this week, which are on radiation, that radiation part. That is something that I've always liked and I'm really enjoying. But yeah, I'm sure by the end of the course, I'll be able to manage it. Right? Though I'm struggling. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm finding it very difficult. There's no doubt.
Thanks, Geetanjali.
That's not entirely unexpected. It's an advanced course after all, and I really don't think that everybody will be able to really put the time and effort needed to get 100% out of this course. But even if you're able to latch on to some things that you understand and like and take that away, that itself is a gain. And so as far as I'm concerned, if each of you are able to take away some new piece of information and some new piece of learning, not necessarily from beginning to end of the whole course, that itself is a significant contribution.
Karmakar, you wanted to ask some question or say something?
Hello, sir.
Yes,
I am Jinsi Thomas. I am Jinsi Thomas from Kerala. Actually, I joined for this course for achieving some goals. But now I didn't give my head and heart to this course because I am in my busy preparations for my classes, so that I can't give my 100% capacity to this course.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Actually,
At what level are you teaching?
Some more, but I expect if my preparations and contents are over, then I can listen to this course. Though I am lagging behind you, sorry for this. I expect I will get something from this course, and I am very much interested to continue through this course.
Right, fair enough.
Thanks, Jinxie.
Our university exams are already on March 15th, so that I have to
Yes.
prepare a lot, and through the online teaching, I have to take a lot of time for the preparations.
I fully sympathize with you. Online teaching, preparing all material and so on takes a lot more time than classroom teaching.
But I will keep in touch with this class.
Thank you.
Even though I am
Sure.
sitting here, I am taking my 2 legs on 2 boards, just like this. Here today itself, I have online class at 8 p.m.
Okay. Yeah.
The lecture videos will pretty much be permanently available on YouTube, so you can come back to it anytime.
Okay, sir.
Thanks. Jyotival Devnath.
Sir?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I am learning the many things from these lectures, and yes, I am very thankful to sir for those beautiful lectures. And magnetics, the simulations part is a little bit hard. I find some hard things for me, but everything is okay with the lecture. I am very enjoying the lecture very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The one problem with the simulations is that you are not actually seeing some derivation and things like that. You're seeing pictures. And the pictures have been produced by using all those principles, but there is a lot of computation that has gone behind. And those computations you are not getting exposed to. So there is a little bit of a disconnect. How do I get from the concept to the pictures that I'm seeing? So that is a little bit of a leap that you have to take. You have to conceptualize how the basic electromagnetics give you the kind of behavior that the simulations are showing.
So actually, I have a question about another topic. Can I ask here or something else?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, sir. Actually, I have a question that if pulsar in a binary systems, then if we include the light bending effect due to the binary mass, companion mass, then what do we expect about the beam geometry, beam shape, or anything? Anything you comment on?
So at a given phase, you will see the you will see the radiation coming from a slightly different angle compared to what you would have seen if the other companion was not there in the line of sight. Now remember, this is transient because the pulsar is moving around the companion. It is only certain orbital phase at which the line of sight will pass close to the companion star. At other times, it will not. So between that time and this time, you will see slight change in the, basically your time axis is going to get slightly distorted because of the presence of the companion. That's all that is going to happen.
Which axis?
The time axis. As a function of time, you see a pulse profile. So that will either get stretched or squeezed depending on where the radiation is coming from. So the entire pulse may get shifted in time slightly because of this. And that is the delay that you measure. And this that delay is what gives you a measure of the gravitational field that the pulse is passing through.
This is the Shapiro delay, right?
Yeah, this is the Shapiro delay.
Thank you. Jyotsna Patil.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Actually, I have been through data analysis of pulsar astronomy, but I haven't been through the theoretical part, whatever I'm learning now. So this course is helpful for me to learn these things like all those magnetosphere and all those things. And I'm thinking that this course only for me. That's it. But like all those people, I'm also finding
Difficult.
it is difficult to understand. And
Okay.
Yeah, your audio is breaking a bit, but we got it.
I think we got a sense of what you're trying to say. So, because we couldn't hear you entirely well, but I think what you said is that, like everyone else, you are also finding things somewhat difficult, and that is not surprising. It's not meant to be easy.
yes.
Anyway, thanks for sharing that. And if you have
Thank
any
you, sir.
questions, you can always bring it up here or in the forums.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes.
PK Karmakar, would you like to add something?
Yes, hello.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, very much.
Yeah, good evening, sir. So thanks a lot for nice presentation as well as interactions. Actually, let me tell you that I am fundamentally from plasma physics background and mostly astrophysical plasmas. And this course is very helpful for me in order to understand or apply electrodynamics to understand the magnetospheric dynamics of pulsars. So regarding that, sir, I would like to ask 2-3 questions.
Okay.
So as far as known, so what are the fundamental differences, what do you find between planetary magnetospheres and other magnetospheres? And secondly, I would like to ask, what are the plasma-based or plasma polarization-based problems associated with pulsar dynamics and magnetospheres, which are yet to be understood, at least?
Well, the first question, there are a number of differences. One is the pulsar magnetospheric plasma is basically electron-positron plasma and not electron-ion plasma.
Right.
So, so that's a major difference because the inertia of the ions cause different dynamics in planetary magnetospheres. So
right.
And that doesn't happen. Secondly, the Lorentz factors are extremely high in this case, whereas in
the pulsar
magnetosphere, yeah. Whereas in the planetary magnetosphere, the Lorentz factors are close to unity. So that again makes a big difference in the dynamics. The third is the radiative regime that one is in. For example, curvature radiation you will not really encounter in a major way in a planetary magnetosphere because the perpendicular momentum to the magnetic field is not going to be radiated away so quickly because the field strengths are much smaller.
Yes.
In pulsar magnetosphere, that becomes a major issue that the perpendicular momentum cannot be held. So particles are forced to follow the magnetic field. And so curvature radiation becomes a dominant mechanism of radiation, which also you will not find in planetary magnetospheres. Regarding how many open problems are there in pulsar magnetospheres, there are plenty. So I don't think I'm going to list them here.
Okay. Now, mainly plasma, my focus was just mainly plasma polarization based problems. Actually, in magnetospheres, what we consider, we apply mean fluidic model, right? Electron fluid, that is electron inertia is negligible and extremely, that is infinitely conductive. So based on some approximations, it is reduced to a single fluid model, what is called your MSD model, right?
Yes.
And that polarization effect cannot be understood or cannot be described with the help of MSD model, mean fluidic model. So for that, we need to separate it out. That is, if, for example, if electrons and positrons are there, okay, suppose in some of the regions where it happens, whenever it applicable, then their response time scales, electrodynamical response time scales are different. So we can also consider to separate fluids.
No, because in an electric field, they will be accelerated differently because of the charge. But why should the response time of the electron and positron be different? I don't think so. For electron ion, it is different because of the mass. But electrons and positrons having
electron ion, it will be different.
Yeah. So, but the
same mass and charge. Okay, so that should.
Yeah. And so you expect different Lorentz factor distribution of these two species, and we will touch upon this a little bit during the description of radiation. But yes, so that's trying to understand the effects of this also. The fact that there are two charges and they will behave differently in a given electric field, and how that will affect the pulsar emission. But typically, the separation in the Lorentz factor distribution is small compared to the total net Lorentz factor.
Okay.
So it can be treated as a small effect, whereas the overall, you can still consider this as one fluid plasma which is moving out.
Okay.
But there is literature on this. What
Okay, so I'm new now. That's what I'm asking from the fundamental.
I'm sure you would not have been exposed to literature in this domain. So this is quite specialized because there are not many objects in the universe where this applies. So
right.
So you will have to really specially look for literature in the pulsar domain to relate to it. But there is some literature, so one can one can refer to that. So you can do that offline.
Okay. Thanks a lot, sir.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Prati?
Hi, Dipankar.
Hi.
First of all, I'd like to thank Dipankar, Desh, Prakash, Susan, everybody for making this possible. For me, the most important thing that I learned from this course was, especially coming from the background of working with X-ray pulsars and binaries, like I have a tendency to think about the observational aspects of accretion on X-ray signatures, and that's what I have been thinking of what X-ray pulsars are massively. But this course has enabled me to really think about isolated pulsars in general, and also about the detailed geometry and different emission processes apart from X-rays, so radio and gamma. So I got to know about a lot of in general geometry about these isolated pulsars. Surely it has taken me, like everybody else, it has taken me more than 5 to 7 hours a week. And over the past, since this course started, I've been mostly dedicating my weekends to just listen to the quiz, and then I have to really listen and then re-listen to it again, like go back to what you were saying. So a 1 hour lecture doesn't really last for 1 hour. It takes more than that, and sometimes I'll have to go back and again think about it when I'm attempting the quiz and stuff like that. But overall, it has been a really good experience, and I would really like, what I would like to comment on is the design of the assignment derivation. I would like to say, what helped me with the algebraical derivation in general was the stepwise enumeration of the steps that has been given in the assignment. That has really helped me, reach the final steps. And if there are some confusions, for example, about a couple of steps in general, I've been writing to Prakash and, just clarifying, is this what I understood, or is there something missing about this step that has been put in? So that has been really helpful. what is difficult for me changes every week, I would say. So for the first week, I think I thought, oh my God, RVM, the rotating vector model, is really taking a lot of my time. And then I realized, oh, the next week it is, the derivation of the Goldrich-Julian model. And then it has been changing that way. And right now it is the magnetosphere model. So that has been something, but I'm really learning about all of these. And about the quizzes in general, what really, for example, Chetna was also pointing out was, I think I have difficulty really choosing something as an absolute answer. For example, in assignments, I can still write a footnote or something like that, and then I say, okay, this is in under these conditions or something like that. But for quizzes, these, and I mean, for questions that have a really objective answer, I don't mind, like a numerical answer, or an expression that needs to be chosen from 4 of them is where I'm fine. But when there are multiple choices questions that deals with I don't know, maybe the assumptions and things like that, I've noticed that I usually make mistakes there, because I'm in my mind, I'm like, oh, this could be it, but maybe this is not in this solution, things like that. So that has been something for me. And if I may request, if it's possible, what I am missing right now is I have understood these sections to whatever extent I can, but in patches. And if it will be possible for maybe, I don't know, during the course, a couple of minutes, for Dipankar to maybe stitch all these together. We start with this, and then the next model, it will probably lead to this without the explanation, illustration, or the equations. If it's just possible to stitch this these lectures together, that is something that I would really look forward to.
I'm not sure what you meant by stitch them together, meaning putting the different components together to make a full picture.
Yes. So like, for example, we start with the Goldrich-Julian, and then we go to the electrosphere model and things like that. If we just because right now I'm understanding them, but I'm not really able to bind them together in a coherent picture in my mind. So I mean, I understand one of this, and then I go back to the other lecture, and then I tend to forget about that one. And then I have to correlate the assumptions, the differences made in these two. So it's always good to hear from somebody, a coherent picture of that. So if that's something that I would,
we will think about this in the design of the course. Maybe one of the Mondays we'll see whether this is possible to do, to add some discussion to sort of clarify the overall flow. That's what I think what you're talking about. Okay, thank you. Thank you for those comments. Any credit for the assignments goes entirely to Prakash.
That's been really well designed, I would say.
Thanks, Pragati. About the questions, I can see some of you are having problem with the subjective nature of some of the multiple choice questions and so on. You can always discuss the concept that you're not understanding that in the forums or during one of these meetings, as long as it's not completely blatantly asking, whether this is right or this option of this question is right or wrong. That's why it's sort of kept as an open quiz, open book quiz for 1 week. Like, you can interact with people and try to understand the concept. And if you discuss that and get the right answer, it's the best. You don't have to worry about. I mean, the quiz itself does not require that you try to understand it by yourself and try to answer those things. So there might be some confusion. You can always clarify, making sure that you're trying to understand that concept rather than getting an answer to the question. So we won't mind if you do that. So for everybody, you can follow that. Okay, Prateek. Slightly over time, it's okay.
It's
Dipankar,
okay.
if you take five more
There aren't that
minutes.
many people. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, Prakash, and hello, Dipankar sir. So first, I should tell you why I decided to join this course. So the first thing is that I have very recently joined as a postdoc in a group which works on pulsars. So, before that, during my PhD, I did not have any experience with pulsars at all. I had been primarily working on black hole accretion problems, mainly the theory of accretion disks, black hole accretion disks. So this pulsar astrophysics is entirely new. It's a very new subject to me. So it's it's actually for my survival also, because I shall be working on a topic of which I knew nothing about previously. So that's why I joined this course, to learn something. And secondly, the second reason is that I think it was in May last year, I had attended an online conference that was the virtual meeting on compact stars and QCD.
CSQCD, yeah, ICTS, yeah.
Yeah, ICTS. So I had attended that conference, and I remember that Dipankar sir had delivered a series of lectures over there, and I really liked those lectures. So I felt like I could understand something when I was listening to those lectures. So when Dr. Monjuri Bakchi, she told me about this course, so I just I grabbed the opportunity. I wanted to do this course, so that I could learn something regarding pulsars. So that is the reason. And next, regarding the difficult parts, I would say that it's about those analytical models of magnetosphere, pulsar magnetosphere. So I had been going through the research articles. I had been trying hard to derive all the results, each and every step on my own. Now, while deriving, I must say that the assignments were designed beautifully by Prakash. The way he designed the assignments, it was like, every assumption was, mentioned. It was mentioned that after this step you should do this and do that. So it was, designed. It has been designed in a very simple way. So it was very helpful for me. But yes, I mean, it was still a bit challenging, the algebra and all those things. So I'm still trying to understand those all the assumptions properly, and the mathematics. I'm trying to working it out properly. And I must admit that I have been lagging a bit. So for the past few weeks, a lot of things have been going on over here. I had my PhD defense and all this stuff, so I was a bit busy. But I'm trying to cope with these things. And in the last assignment, I think I could not complete all of it because of the shortage of time. I could not actually manage time. But I shall go through all the derivations. I will try to understand it completely. And if I face any difficulties, I shall get back to Dipankar sir. I can contact Prakash. I think I can contact you as well, sir, to clarify my doubt.
You can do that.
Yeah.
I think this is the acid test of this course. This is designed for exactly people like you. So I hope that you will be able to take some significant fraction, get some significant amount from this course.
Yeah.
So we should certainly talk to you more about how.
In fact, I think if I can visit Ayuka once after all these difficulties are over, this corona difficulty, it might be helpful for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm planning to join the IPTA group, this INPTA group.
Right.
So I might, I shall need to interact more with the Pulsar community. So.
Sure. You're welcome. Once we open visitor program, I think we'll be very happy to have you here. So right now, of course, we are all locked down for various things, but let's hope that we open soon. Yeah.
Thanks, Pratik. Raghav?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Raghav. I'm just new in this field because I'm pursuing my last year MSc Physics. When I start this course, then that was simply because it was just rotating vector model and just basic properties. After that, when we enter in pulsar magnetosphere, from there, I am not able to manage my time because of many difficulties, and my midterm exam is going now. Therefore, currently I am not doing well in this course, but I learned many new things like application of ED in this new field. And
Okay.
thank you, Prakash sir, for me for assignments and quiz for thinking after thinking lots of times me.
You're welcome, Raghav.
Thank you,
And
sir.
keep
Thank
at
you,
it.
Dipankar
I
sir.
mean,
Thank you,
you can always come back to it, and when you have more time and go through these lectures, I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Vijay, you have been very vocal during all our meetings, so we sort of know what your interests are. But if you would like to add something briefly, you can add. Vijay?
Yeah, just a minute. Sir, good evening to you once again. Actually, I have to introduce myself first. I'm doing MTech in Amrita University. It's in artificial intelligence. So I find this course particularly interesting. I'm not from MSc Physics, obviously. I've done my GATE in Physics a couple of years back. So I have some background in astronomy, astrophysics. That was this course, Evolving Universe course that I took. And I also prepared for the International Astronomy Astrophysics competition. So some background was that, but I can say this course was extremely useful. This is the fully advanced, first time I'm exposed to a fully advanced astrophysics course. So I didn't find it particularly difficult because as others have pointed out, Mr. Prakash's assignments was great and Professor Dipankar's class was also great. In fact, it was really great. He was answering all my questions. Some of them, they were by no means good questions, but he was still answering them. I'm very happy. It actually helps me understand physics as well as pulsars. But one thing I would like to add, I do share the difficulty of most of the other people who are part of this course. That is particularly because I can say there is no good book on pulsar astrophysics in particular. Okay, there are a couple of books available online, but they are highly qualitative. You have to stick to the papers. So I think I would strongly urge Professor Dipankar to write a book for everyone in the pulsar astrophysics community. It would be great. So that is the only way I think we can tide over this difficulty.
Vijay, you just stole my words. This is what I was going to say at the end of this.
Thank you.
Yeah, but the same thing happened to me. Like I was going to appreciate Prakash's assignments, and others actually did that. So it's quite natural. So that is the thing. In addition, in fact, I'm doing other advanced course in astrophysics. So I'm doing some multiple courses. I'm actually doing my final year project also. Okay, this is my final semester. So a lot of my internships have got cancelled because of the pandemic. So this is a wonderful opportunity under the circumstances. I'd like to thank that. But as far as improving the grades is concerned, since I'm preparing for JEST also in addition to a lot of things. So if I have more time, I think I can improve the grades. But I find the course very useful. And I do not find it particularly difficult. At the end of the day, all the information is available in some paper only. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Yes. About writing a book. Desh, you wanted to say something?
You've thought about it, Dipankar?
I have not really considered that seriously. But, right now my life is such that it is not really immediately possible. But maybe in the future I'll give it some thought. But if there are others planning to join and willing to contribute, it will be easier. Like Desh and Prakash and others.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
No, I think what you already have as a material, okay,
yeah.
Just even putting them in transcript form, okay, would go a long way.
Yeah.
Okay, that could be a good beginning, and then you will not find it as steep a task to carve out time from your other schedules to look into it if a transcript becomes available. So why not begin with that?
Yeah, so transcript, somebody also asked last week. So transcript can be made. I mean, it's in these days, even automatically the speech can be transcribed. And then one has to do some significant amount of editing usually.
Yeah, there will be some editing required, but that's largely much the editing that you would like to do to add a few things anyway.
Yeah. So I think as a first level, that is not a formidable project to take up. So we can try doing that certainly, which maybe next time this course is given, if such material is available at hand, it will definitely help the participants. I also requested some of the participants to come up with some notes. I don't know how that is going. That might be useful as well.
In fact, if each one of them volunteers to read the transcripted version and edit it to the level that the automatic transcription idiosyncrasies have to be taken out, that itself will be a very good collective contribution.
Right.
And it won't be a big load on any one of them.
Yeah, I mean, even I can volunteer for at least 1 or 2 lectures to be sort of taken proper notes and contributed to the whole group.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Abhay was suggesting that we could distribute it over the participants, so we can see it. I mean, I don't know whether during the course they'll be able to spend extra time on this. So I was
maybe a little after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can keep this project open for after the course. And Prakash, you can try some good software for closed captioning and capture the captions, which will give you the first level transcription.
Right.
There is actually, I had something, Google also has something, the Google Transcribe or something like that. So you put audio through it, it transcribes. It makes so many mistakes that after a point I had given up, but one can try this now.
Yeah, in many of the lectures, actually, YouTube allows you to automatically start closed captioning.
Yeah. So
but
YouTube
in some of them,
captioning,
it says the audio is not clear. That's why it doesn't show up. But we could do it. We could use some other software too and try it out, and maybe get help from some of the participants. And
correct. So I think that is something that we can try out. So that gives us a base, and we can work with that base.
I always imagined a book, which I don't know how far it's plausible, but certainly think about it. Written collectively by the 3 generations, which you being the middle one.
Yes.
Together. Okay. So do consider that. See.
Yes, I think that would be very nice. Let's see if that is possible. So thank you. On that note,
we will not title it the way Rajaram does. Kal, aaj aur kal.
Right. But every subject has its kal, aaj aur kal.
Yeah. No. So that after colon, it can always.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's an inspiring idea. I think we should give it serious thought and.
Yeah, I think that will go a long way in bridging certain gaps which exist.
Right. Yes. So thank you. I think it gives us more things to do.
Right.
But I think it will be a rewarding thing to do.
Thanks, Dipankar. And thanks everyone for joining this week. And for sharing all your thoughts. I'm sure it helped to listen to each other's thoughts as well.
I think we're at a good point to have taken this review. It's roughly the middle of the course.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you very much for your comments and sharing your ideas.
Okay, then see you all next week.